Hello, I'm Evette Everett, and I'm from Buffalo, New York. I call myself a jewelry artist because I believe that I do more than make jewelry. I try to make art to wear. Somewhere along the way, and I'm not sure where, I developed a love of jewelry. And I always was a collector. Before I started making pieces to sell, uh, I had great joy of going to unique boutiques and purchasing a special piece of jewelry for myself. Usually it was a pair of earrings because that was all I could afford. But it was something very unique, and I just have always liked unique things. And the jewelry was where jewelry and clothing were the areas where, I expressed wanting to have unique things in my wardrobe. I'm just going to show you an example of, so that you can understand what I'm doing here. This is an art necklace, and it has my glass in it, which is what I showed you over there. And this is one of my clay pieces. This is one of my clay pieces. And then I integrate them with other beads. So I'm going to show you the process of making these clay pieces, which is really takes a long time because there's a lot of steps to it. I'm starting with raw clay. I'm using a white clay now. I use white and black, and the white clay I paint on. So when you see paint, I've actually painted the glaze on, but it starts with raw clay that's not shaped. These are in process. This is what I did last night. I'm trying to get ready for the upcoming show, so I'm making a lot of pieces. But they started as clay, like this. And I basically roll it out. I'm not going to actually make anything real, but I would roll it out to the thickness that I want. And actually, I make things that are I like unusual shapes, and I like geometric kind of shapes. So I've made myself some templates, and I don't usually work on newspaper, but I'm just, usually I would be working on this. I need 2 of these because I make them like a sandwich. So I'm not just doing a lump of clay and putting holes in it. I actually do more steps so that they can be cleaner looking. Now this is just the way I do it. There's probably another way. Then I would put some nails in one of the bottom piece, one of them. And I can't just put the other piece over it or it won't be nice. So I'm actually going to make a third little piece. And that's going to be in the middle. I'm going to make like a sandwich. And the reason I take all these steps, I could do a shortcut, which maybe a lot of people would do, but I don't think it's as smooth as taking a little more time and extra steps, a longer process. And when you do clay, in order for it to stay, you need to score it. So I can't just plop things on each other. I actually have to score each piece so that when I add a little water, it's going to make kind of like a glue.
What does it mean to score it?
Use a knife and make marks on it. And so I'm going to put a little water on all my pieces. And then when I put this over it, it's going to be the right shape. Okay, so I've got, and as you can see, it's flush with the nail, and that's what I was trying to do. If I was to put that right on top, the nails would have shown. So now I have to score this to go on top of that, and score each piece. And I think this is what makes my pieces different than a lot of, even people who make clay beads. They're not going to do this kind of work. They're going to make things that are easy shapes. This is not an easy shape, because now, after this is just the beginning. This is going to sit for a while. I'm going to take the nails out. I'm going to shape it better. It's going to get hard. Then I'm going to have to sand all this because I want the edges to be, you know, nice and smooth. So that's going to take more time. Then after they're dried to a good, you know, this is, I don't know whether you can tell, this is dried. This is good. I made this last night. It's darker, so it needs to dry another day because I made this the day before. So you have to wait for the clay to dry. Then you can put it in the kiln for the first firing, which after that firing, you can start painting it. So that's another, the painting of the pieces. You use glaze. I use, you know, the glaze comes in, and actually you really can't tell the color from the bottle on a lot of these, but I use these glazes, and you have to paint for something like this. I had to paint 3 coats of the base color, and then I had to paint 3 coats of the other color. Some of my beads have 3 or 4 colors. Each color is 3 or 4 layers of paint, and you have to wait for it to dry before each layer before you paint. So it's several hours to do the painting, and actually several firings sometimes.
I was getting ready to ask, you have to fire after you paint and then bring it back and glaze it again with a different color?
You can skip some firings, but you have to be careful. Because they will, if it's not dry, you know, it's harder to paint over wet paint than glaze it and bring it out. Once it's been in the kiln, then the color is on there. You put another color over it, you don't have to worry about it running or messing up. Mm-hmm. So if you can do it all in one time, but I usually will do a base coat. I'll get my base coat down, and then maybe I'll come and do another, and then you have to put the clear over that, the protective coat. So the clay actually is very time intensive because you have to wait, you know, after I make these shapes, got to wait for them to dry. I'm going to sand them. That's going to take a couple hours. Then the kiln is like overnight process. You can take them out of the kiln, you start painting. That's going to be an all-day process, the painting, because you have to dry, and you have to wait for the paint to dry. So you can't hurry it. Usually when I'm doing this is very dirty, so it's hard for me. I wash my hands a lot. So if I want to jump from this, and then I'm going to go, you know, maybe work on a piece back and forth, because while you're waiting for the paint takes about at least a half an hour to dry between the coats. So it's just slow. And so the clay things really take me a good week, 10 days to get to the point where I actually have a finished piece, you know, and I can put it in a necklace. This is an example. These are finished. These are out of the kiln, but they come out black. And sometimes I actually may take a piece and do a finish on the black, because you know you can paint on anything. Sometimes I do a metal leafing on it if I feel like it, or I actually can do. Sometimes I do acrylic paint if I want to. I usually I have a lot of ideas going through my head all the time, and sometimes I'll draw it. You know, if actually now the older I get, the more I have to draw things so that I don't forget them. And then basically I take my idea and I try to figure out what's going to be glass and what's going to be clay, and then I try to make the pieces. So then I'll go and actually make, you know, by hand, I'll make the clay and the glass that I have visualized. When they are finished, then I try to put the piece together. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. The glass process, which is what's in this necklace, this is all of my fused glass pieces with fine silver. So basically when I make something like this, or in this piece we have, this is my glass work here. I actually have earrings laid out. So this is a final pair, and this is actually the beginning process. My glass comes in sheets like this. It's already colored, and I use a glass cutter to cut. I pretty much do everything freehand. I mean, I could have a fancy thing with grids and stuff, but sometimes I do use you know, measuring. And that's an example of a bad cut, which does happen sometimes. That's a good cut. So basically, sometimes I measure, and sometimes I use something that I already have to, you know, use as a reference. And I have to cut the base pieces. This is for making earrings. So we're pretend that those are what I did, and I actually would get it a little better. Okay.
Where did you get the idea to start fusing the glass?
Well, you know, I've been doing this for about 14 years, and right now fused glass is very popular. A lot of people are doing fused glass. When I started it, it was just coming into its own. But I love glass. I love clay and I love glass, and that's why I have gravitated toward both of those. And I also do all the wire work. So I buy fine silver wire, and actually that's the wrong size. And I have to make all the loops and everything. So there are other ways to do this, but I pretty much do everything by hand. Some people glue the loops in, but gluing is not as, I don't think it's a good way to do it. So, and then I have to shape the pieces into loops. I have 2 loops, and then we use glue, blue glue, always blue glue for the glass. And you put it on so that the reason you have to glue it is so that when it starts heating in the kiln, it doesn't fall away. And with the high heat, which reaches about 1400, almost 1500 degrees these things are fired at. Depending on what I'm making, sometimes I go to 1550, depending on how much I want it melted. Then after I have my base, then I continue to cut glass, whatever colors I'm deciding to work with. So I want to make a pair of orange earrings.
And can you tell us why always blue glue?
That's what they teach you. I don't know. I guess they like the blue glue. The glass likes the blue glue. It evaporates in the kiln, so when you get your piece out, you don't see the glue. And so I need to cover the, actually I'm going to make a simple pair. Normally I do more work than this, but I'm going to make them a little simpler. I'm cutting small pieces to cover the wire. And as I said, I don't do a lot of measuring. Sometimes I do, you know, if I have to. But and then it's important to make sure that everything is centered. All right, so we also have glass. This is regular fusing glass. It's called COE 90. That relates to the temperature that it melts at. There's different temperatures of glass. You can get COE 96 and different types of glass. You have to use a glass that's compatible to itself. So I can't mix glasses. So I always use COE 90. Now this type of glass, this very shiny, I don't know whether you can, it's bouncing on the camera here. This is called acrylic glass. It's very expensive, and this is what gives you all the fancy shines. And I don't know whether you can see this, but when you turn it, it may look pink on one side, and you turn it the other way and it may look gold. Well, that's what it does in the kiln, and you don't always know what color you're going to get. So that's why it can be very difficult to work with the glass if you want something to be exact. So it's better to not to care too much if you make a boo-boo or if it doesn't come out the way you want it.